Hello, this is Bill Zoller with the Wellness Warriors Ministry, and today we're going to be talking about genetically modified / genetically engineered foods, really some select issues that bear on our health and wellness. Genetic modification is a process where scientists take genes from one species and force them into the DNA of another species. We're talking about this today for several important reasons. There's been a lot of media coverage in recent years about this. There's a lot of evolving research that is very important. There are an increasing percentage of crops that are now being raised as genetically modified. Cutting and pasting DNA in a laboratory, on the face of it, appears to be unhealthy, probably unethical, and certainly unnatural. Our government permits this to happen, and labeling of these genetically modified foods is not required in our country. This whole movement of genetic modification started in 1994 with a tomato and scientists creating an altered tomato with a delayed ripening component. So researchers altered the DNA of the tomato, turning off genes that cause fast ripening and allowing tomatoes to last longer. Now most varieties of corn and soy and cottonseed and canola and sugar beets contain genetically modified ingredients. Salmon also has been genetically modified, and so we need to be cautious in restaurants and cautious in the food store when we buy salmon to verify whether it's wild harvested or genetically modified. So now what we are doing is creating herbicide-resistant crops, which you can spray with a huge amount of toxic chemicals, and the chemicals kill everything except that particular crop. A very important point that I want to make today is that organic farming is put at risk through these genetically modified crops. One way is because of this cross-contamination caused by wind and insects and rain and other things, so that the genetically modified seeds and genes cross into conventionally and organically grown crops. Secondly, about 20% of genetically engineered crops planted in this country contain a genetically altered version of the natural non-chemical pesticide Bacillus thuringiensis, or called BT. This robs organic farmers of their major tool for containing pests, forcing potentially thousands of growers to go back to toxic chemical inputs in their farming and forcing them out of organic farming. In rat studies, the animals consuming genetically modified potatoes had slower growth, problems with internal development of organs, a stunted immune system, smaller brains, liver, and testicles. Most studies, or at least very many, show that GMO food damages organs, causes infertility and immune system failure, and causes holes in our gastrointestinal tracts. The FDA does not require a single safety study. They leave it to the companies like Monsanto. So now we have about 107 million acres of genetically engineered corn, soybeans, cotton, canola, and sugar beets because the food does not have to be labeled. 95% of all the genetically modifications are done in order to allow plants to survive more chemicals being sprayed on them and to allow animals to survive more drugs being put into them. And here's a critical point. When their genes are changed, our genes are changed by consuming them. Just as the superweeds and superbugs are genetically altered by consuming them, the bugs eat the plant and its genes change. When the animal eats the plant, its genes change. When we eat the animal or the plant, our genes change. Our baby's genes change, and this change is likely permanent. In India, sheep died within 3 days of grazing on Bt cotton plants. In a 2012 study published in the Journal of Reproductive Toxicology, they found that over 93% of genetically engineered toxins were found in the blood of pregnant women and were found in 80% of the fetuses. A study of genetically engineered soybeans found that they have as much as 7 times the amount of a known allergen compared to a non-GMO soybean when cooked. Now, an estimated 70 to 75% of processed foods contain genetically engineered ingredients. In the mid-1980s, Monsanto and 3 other biotech companies developed a genetically engineered hormone called recombinant bovine growth hormone, or RBGH, to inject into cows so that the cows could produce more milk. So what resulted from this is then we found that milk from these cows treated with this genetically engineered hormone contains higher levels of another hormone called IGF-1, insulin growth factor 1, which is implicated in many health difficulties. So milk from these cows treated with RBGH contain higher levels of IGF-1. And research has shown that IGF-1 tainted milk survives the human digestion process and ends up in our bodies. The problem, negative health risks. In 1995, a conference by the National Institutes of Health identified the following potential adverse effects of IGF-1. A strong role in breast cancer, special risk of colon cancer due to local effects on the GI tract, a possible role in osteosarcoma, the most common bone cancer in children, usually occurring during the adolescent growth spurt. IGF-1 is also implicated in lung cancer. Ingestion of these genetically modified foods raises markers of inflammation, a possible relationship to the increasing frequency of food allergies and low vitamin D levels. It is interesting that 27 countries have entirely banned genetically modified food production, and another 61 countries require all food items produced with GMO foods to be labeled as such. Once you apply these poisons on your farmland, the soil is damaged and some say devastated. This Bt corn, Bt soy, and Roundup Ready seeds kill beneficial microorganisms in the soil. The weeds become resistant to the glyphosate herbicide in Roundup, so they have to use more and more. This Roundup stays in the soil for months, if not years, and during that time compromises the amount of plant nutrients. On March 19, 2015, glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, was declared a probable carcinogen by the National Agency for Research on Cancer. The announcement was published in the prestigious medical journal Lancet Oncology. A recent analysis of research by the Institute for Responsible Technology suggests that Bt toxin, glyphosate, and other components of GMO food are linked to 5 conditions that may either initiate or make worse gluten-related disorders, including intestinal permeability, imbalanced gut bacteria, immune activation and allergies, impaired digestion, and damage to the intestinal wall. Dr. John Mcdougall, one of the medical practitioners who we follow in our Wellness Warriors ministry and who I have great respect for, a very insightful and effective physician, he takes a little bit different view of this GMO issue and points out to us that really we don't have any studies that genetically modified foods have killed people, while certainly cancer and heart disease and the complications of type 2 diabetes and so on kill thousands and thousands of people. And so he wants to be sure that this genetically modified foods issue does not become a distraction from these other very prominent health problems. He also points out that the current epidemics of obesity and related diseases like type 2 diabetes were on the rise long before the introduction of GMO foods. Very interesting point. So in terms of recommendations, here's what we would recommend. Number 1, be extremely careful in purchasing processed foods. In fact, we would ideally recommend that you not purchase any processed foods, because 70 or 80% of them at least contain genetically modified foods. Secondly, buy certified organic products whenever you have the opportunity to, instead of genetically modified products. Thirdly, eating out should generally be avoided. Boy, what a popular recommendation that's going to be. Or restaurants utilized rarely, because most restaurants really don't care about this issue very much. They care about making money. They care about having tasty food that brings customers back to their restaurants. Fourthly, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine recommends that all doctors should prescribe non-GMO diets to everyone. So that's very interesting and important recommendations. Well, thank you for being with us today. We urge you to stay in touch with our ministry by utilizing our website at mywellnesswarriors.com. Also, if you would be kind enough to friend us on Facebook, the name is William Zoller. Thank you for being with us today.